Students of Reddit, have you ever lost your temper with a teacher? What's your story? Not me, but a girl flipped crap on my economics professor cause she kept canceling class without sending out emails. The girl only had that class on Fridays and drove an hour to get there. It sucks she got caught in traffic, just to get a note next to the classroom saying cancelled. Next story. A friend of mine wanted to go to a certain university that was out of state and somewhat tough to get into. The counselor told him not to waste his time as he would never get in. This pissed him off, so he went to the principal, who told him to trust the counselor as that was her job. He applied anyways, got accepted, and taped 2 copies to the counselor and principal's door. He couldn't afford to go anyways, but he was trying to prove a point. Next story. Oof, that brought back a bad memory. My mother and father passed when I was in my final year of school. I was off school for a while around the time of the second funeral. When I returned to school, my tutor decided it was her job to tell the class what had happened with me, right there in front of everyone, instead of letting me do it on my own terms. To say I lost my temper would be an understatement. Next story. I flipped on several teachers, but this one still bugs me. One of my best friends in high school had died in a car accident, and a couple days later my friends and I told my teacher we would not be able to make it to class because of the viewing. She then proceeded to tell us that we need to plan our days better and how irresponsible it was of us. I've never felt so much rage. Screw you, Mrs. Weaver. Next story. My IT teacher wanted to inspect my work, spreadsheets or a Word document or something. Anyway, she accidentally deleted the file. I was upset and tried to point out she just deleted my work. She started to shout at me, telling me I should have saved frequently. I shouted back, telling her that wasn't the issue. She outright deleted the file. It got pretty heated. My parents were called. We were outright yelling at each other for a good couple of minutes, to the point where we were both in tears. I was about 14 at the time. She should have known better. A few years later, my sister had her when she went to that school, and that same teacher berated my sister, calling her names, etc. Edit. It was a long time ago and I was pretty stressed at the time. I can't remember exactly how, but after several attempts, I wasn't able to restore it. Looking back with what I know now, there are things I could have done to restore it now, even going as far as giving myself admin rights and having a poke around. But I was 14 at the time, being taught IT by a French teacher. Next story. I know a chap who once lost it in a lesson and threw a chair at the teacher. Some years, like 15 or so back, and the two are now good friends. Essentially, a discussion had turned into an argument, holding up the rest of the lesson, with the chap basically being awkward and pedantic, not letting it go, getting unduly steamed up himself, and apparently not realizing that everyone was getting pretty tired. The teacher made some snide remark and the chap flipped, threw a chair and walked out. He waited outside though, cooling off, and afterward the teacher went outside as well, said something to the effect of, "I think we both ought to apologize for what just happened," and so they did. And all was well. Next story. A couple of weeks into my senior year of high school, the president gave a speech about the importance of school or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, all of the teachers in my school had to set up their projectors so we could watch it. My math teacher couldn't figure out how to get her projector working. So, me being the nerdy kid, I offered to help. She had a fit. Started screaming about how she wasn't stupid and how I needed to just sit down and shut up. After a few more minutes of her failing to fix it, she pointed at me and ordered me to fix it. I said, "Fix it yourself." She told the whole class to go next door to watch the speech in that teacher's room. When we got up to leave, she pulled me to the side and told me that when the class got back I was going to stand up and apologize for being so rude to her. I refused and went to join the rest of the class. She spent the rest of the year making my life miserable. She told me on several occasions that she was going to make sure that I failed her class. Sure enough, I failed her class. Only class I ever failed. Edit. Since people are asking why I didn't report it, I did. My parents went to the administrators, but they didn't want to do anything and said it was an issue for the math department head. The department head was a good friend of my teacher and took her side. The class wasn't a requirement for graduation, and it was the last semester before I was done with high school, so I didn't care to waste any more time on it. Edit 2. People are also asking how she can fail me at math since the answers are either right or wrong. I would turn in homework assignments and she wouldn't get them. Students weren't allowed to keep a copy of the tests because the school was worried about test compromises, so she could basically give me whatever she wanted on them and I couldn't prove anything. If there was a dispute about the test grades, the school's policy was to have the department head regrade the test. But as I mentioned, the department head was a friend of hers and found that all of the tests that I disputed were graded correctly. Whether or not that was true I don't know, since I never got to see them. Next story. There was a high school English teacher, Ms. Blades, who was ignoring me for a while. It's worth mentioning that she didn't really like me for some reason. I wasn't a bad or annoying kid. In fact, I was very non-confrontational and mostly kept to myself in and out of class, so I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I had my hand up because I had to use the bathroom and she kept pacing about the room, answering other kids' questions, but would glance at me and immediately look away. After about 5 minutes with my hand up and getting ignored, and about to crap my pants, I whistled as loud as I could. Interrupting anyone was completely out of character for me. Well, once upon a time, I had chipped one of my front teeth, so I could whistle extremely loud because of it. My whistle was just that. It was the whistling equivalent of firing a gun in a closed room. Absolutely deafening. The entire room got quiet and she snapped her head around so fast. As her name might suggest, Ms. Blades was staring daggers into my face. Then one kid goes, "Ooh, he just called you a dog, oh." Then she gained serious momentum from that one off and said, "Oh, I don't think so. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm a dog?" I got sent to the principal's office for disrespecting an ignorant teacher. I used the bathroom on the way there. Edit. So, there have been a lot of assumptions about Ms. Blades lol. I just wanted to say that I can totally vouch for her competence as a teacher, and she was often quite fun and energetic, but she did have one hell of an attitude if you didn't follow her rules. Next story. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher decided the day before the last test of the year to give us an extra 16 pages of new material to learn by ourselves and appear in the test. Needless to say, everyone lost their crap and started complaining. I wrote her an angry letter. I was later forced either to apologize or they would tell my parents. I apologized because I may have been a little inappropriate, and by the end of the year she was fired after her first year in the school. She also thought it was a good idea to bring her dogs to part of the lessons in the science lab, when there are 2 kids who are allergic to dogs. Next story. Did a math test and on the paper you could only mark your answer. You had to do the calculations on another paper. Long story short, my teacher lost my calculations paper and wouldn't admit it. He said I didn't hand it over, that I cheated and some other crap. So I went to the school supervisor and asked to take the test again and she let me. My teacher asked to look while I did the test. He made another test, way harder. I freaking aced it, right on front of him. He hated my guts for the rest of high school and I couldn't care less. Next story. I had a bout of stomach flu which was so intense that it damaged my intestines and as a result my body couldn't process certain foods for a while. This caused me severe pain. I mainly had cramps that were so bad I couldn't do anything useful anymore except curl up and wait for them to be over. It took me more than a month to figure out a very limited amount of safe stuff to eat, which I ended up slowly expanding on over time. I did miss a few weeks of school when it first started though. Directly after my math teacher's class she insisted I come to her and explain why I missed so many of her classes. I had a note from my GP ready, but she dismissed it. She told me she could tell that I wasn't sick, but that I was just lazy and lying to everyone and that she was severely disappointed in me. I literally just walked away, which is the closest I ever got to having a temper tantrum in class. In retrospect, I wish I had told her what I was really thinking, being that I was very disappointed in her.